Most home service owners think the hardest part is hitting $1 million. The truth, the real wall is around $3 million. What's up, blue collar business owner? Welcome back to the Blue Collar Prosperity Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Maskill, where I focus on helping guide you to have a business that produces consistent, positive cash flow. In doing so, you will have the clarity and confidence that your business is headed in the right direction and you can scale with confidence. Today is a solo show. It is the first Monday of the month, and our topic is exactly what we said at the beginning: why most businesses stall around the $3 million mark. Now, that is a very general number. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But what I have realized in not only owning and operating businesses in the trades, but also being a fractional CFO for many businesses in the trades and doing a ton of financial assessments, is that is where progress eventually stalls. Now, the reason, there's several reasons, we're going to get into it, but what we like to talk about on the show is cash flow, and that is really one of the biggest reasons. The most successful businesses are the ones that are predictable. They're the ones that are creating consistent positive cash flow. Their owners sleep well at night. It's no longer stressful worrying about, are we going to be able to pay the bills and make payroll? So for the longest time, what I've realized, I've mentioned this many times, and it is still true to this day, is all the business that I've ran them as a fractional CFO, is one of the hats that I was wearing. And I didn't really realize it until, after the fact of understanding that cash flow is the biggest bottleneck in the growth and scaling of a business. So that's what we do as fractional CFOs. We help guide companies to create consistent positive cash flow. And what I have noticed is the average home service business gets stuck first around $1 million, but we can push through that because we can hire enough people in the field. But why do most companies get stuck between, call it $2.5 and $3.5 million and never make it to $5 million? First, if their pricing is not right, they will not be able to continue to invest in the payroll and overhead that we need to build that next layer of leadership, next layer of management, the additional office that we need. You're at the point where you're actually building legitimate infrastructure to get you to $5, $6, $7 million. You need a service manager. You need an install manager. You might need a call center manager. Depending on how your business is set up, you really have to pay for people before they're actually going to be at 100% capacity. So in order to do that, you need cash flow. If you don't have cash flow, you're not going to be able to put all those managers and leaders in place. You're not going to be able to move into the bigger building, which will allow you to scale, which is where most people get stuck. And let's start where the money starts. The money starts coming into your business when you price something and sell something. And what I've realized is almost all home service business owners do not actually have a pricing model that is allowing them to achieve their goals and scale with confidence and actually, frankly, stay in business and continue to serve customers. So if you go back a couple months, I did a solo show talking about what the average home service business is, and they're on life support. The average net profit is around 3.5%, and it starts with pricing. So we need to be hitting our gross profit numbers. We need to be pricing properly. We need to be including all the things that go into pricing. And some of the things that people miss are maybe you're pricing in all of, call it the materials and equipment, but you're not actually pricing in, and depending on what you call these things, but just say like the everyday hardware, the everyday supplies that your guys need out in the field. Maybe we're not pricing in all of the actual non-billable time that goes on, because the average service tech is only producing revenue about 50% of the time at a really good company. So a lot of times we're missing that in the labor aspect. So it's one thing or another, but more often than not, pricing is wrong because we're not capturing all the inputs that go into what we actually sell. Now, if we get pricing right and we have the proper gross profit, then we need to kind of map out. This is where the next problem comes in, is we need that first layer of management. We need the operations manager. We need the sales manager. We need the service manager. We need that project manager, whatever it might be, but we don't know when we need them. How can we, afford them? And then what revenue do we have to get to for that person to then more or less pay for themselves? So then at $2.5 million, $3 million, the owner can no longer be great at overseeing all the departments of the business, especially in the home service space. Now, if you're in, call it home improvement, where your average ticket is 20, 30, 40, $50,000, or if you're a general contractor, that's a different story. Getting to $3 million, you probably don't need all the managers. But if you're in the plumbing, the HVAC, the electrical, the garage doors, the landscaping, all of those trades, you will start to need multiple managers at the $2.5, $3.5 million mark in order to support a $5 million business. More revenue cannot solve the problem at that point, because it's usually the wrong revenue, and the more you do it, the bigger the problem gets. But what many people do, which is kind of the next problem, is they think if we just do more revenue, it's going to solve the problem. But what happens at that size, more revenue doesn't mean more cash in the bank. If we don't have more cash in the bank, we cannot scale confidently, and we actually end up starting to go backwards, because whether it's people start leaving, we start making bad decisions based on ego and our checking account balance, then we actually make strategic decisions. So at this mark, call it $3 million, if your margins are not dialed in, you can no longer scale. And kind of the way I look at it is multiple phases of business. First, getting to $1 million, you can get it there just by really hard work, to be honest. You might have, one other technician out in the field, one other great installer. You're probably still doing a lot of the sales. Maybe you've got an apprentice. You probably have somebody answering the phone, but you can get to $1 million just by working really hard and kind of doing a little bit of everything. Then to get to, call it $2.5 million, you can just grow the field staff. You can have 3 or 4 service techs. You can have an installer or 2. You can get to that revenue without anybody else overseeing the quality of the work or overseeing the quality of the call center, whatever it might be. But now, once you get to $2.5, $3.5, $4 million, and on your way up, that's when you start to have to put other people in charge of other people, because you don't have the bandwidth anymore. So at that point, if that's not dialed in, your systems and processes aren't dialed in, your training's not dialed in, your onboarding's not dialed in, you just don't have control over everything, and you don't have the time or the bandwidth to have control over everything. So if you don't have everything dialed in, it's going to be really hard to get it to the next level. There's a really good book I mentioned before. It's called Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. And even he talks about it in there, that's where most businesses go to die. So at that point, call it the $2.5 million mark, it is imperative to have forecasting in place, cash flow projections in place. So if we hire this person at this point, at what point will we get back to our regular margins of, call it 15 to 20% net profit? If you're not already there, call it 15 to 20% net profit at the $2.5 to $3.5 million range, it's going to be really hard to get there without having a lot of sleepless nights, without drawing on the line of credit over and over, and doing all the things that eventually never actually get us to where we want to go in the first place. So as we start to kind of wrap this up, it is a shorter than normal episode, but some of the key takeaways is we got to get our pricing dialed in order to make sure we are hitting our 50 to 60% gross profit, depending on your model. If you're more construction, install heavy, your gross profit might be below 50%. But once we have that dialed in, then we got to have the systems and processes in place. We have to have the training in place. We have to have the onboarding and hiring in place. Because then the next thing we need to do to get over this hump is to start to put those other managers in place. And here's the thing, the first hire, the first service manager, first install manager is probably not going to be the best one, and you're going to have to replace that person, but at least have everything in place in order to bring them on. Once we get there, then we need our forecasting and projecting, so we know where we're at from a cash flow standpoint. What's going to happen if we make this hire? What's going to happen if we move into this building and our rent doubles? What's going to happen if we need to invest in certain things? Because we need to know that in order to then proactively make those decisions. So all that being said, when we're able to do that, you will be able to know what revenue point will we get back to those target margins. So say we get to 15% even. Say we get to 15% at $3 million. Now we know, okay, that's kind of baseline. Now let's go hire that service manager. That service manager's maybe he's going to knock us down to, call it 12% short term. But then eventually, if it's the right hire and everything's in place and the cash flow is there, we should be able to get to maybe 17% net profit, because instead of you, the owner, being the service manager in 100 different roles, you have a full-time service manager that's fully focused on serving your service techs. They should, in theory, become more profitable, and your business should be getting better and better. So all that to say, don't let that $3 million ceiling stop you. Run your numbers before hiring managers. Make sure you have the systems and processes in place. Make sure you have the infrastructure there. And make sure, most importantly, your pricing is in line. If you are unsure or have additional questions on that, feel free to reach out to me. The best place to do that is just go to my website, thebluecollaradvisors.com. You can go there, you can book a call with me, or there is a pricing calculator you can download. It's totally free, and that'll help you solve the number one problem I see in home service businesses. All that. The key to this is just take action, get 1% better every single day. If you get better 1% every single day, you'll be 37 times better in the next year. We just got to take action and get started and make it happen. Again, if you have any questions, need any help, go to thebluecollaradvisors.com. Otherwise, we'll catch you on next week's episode.